Hey, we're back. I hope everybody had time to take a look at the project and try it out. And now I'm going to be spending some time doing it myself. Now, I will say this will not take. I think I got about 40 minutes. This will not take us 40 minutes. It will be much quicker than that. But hopefully I'll give you an idea of how to set this up and do this project yourselves when you, if you decide to follow this along later on, or if you got stuck at a certain point, this will help you get unstuck. Awesome. So let's just begin at the beginning here, as everything does start at the beginning. So there's a couple steps. First, I talked a little bit before the 45-minute break that docs.amplify at AWS is your friend. Of course, I have that open here. And the next step is to set up your local development environment using the AWS Local Development Guide. So if we click here, I already have that open. Essentially, these are the steps to set that up. Now, I was going to try to walk through that with you guys here, but I think I'm just going to do a high-level overview of how to set that up because you can really only set up IAM Identity Center once for the region that you're in. You don't normally set that up for each region, and I already set it up. But I will kind of I'll walk through that, essentially what I did to get it up and running. So first, and I think we'll just kind of switch between the tabs here. But it's really important that you set up IAM Identity Center because this is the way you can set up your local credentials and permissions on your system. And this works for your Mac, Linux, Windows system out there. And the way the single sign-on works is that it gives you a set of temporary credentials. And then every time you want to connect to AWS services locally, like in your terminal, you have to log in again. And that way it's kind of like short-lived credentials that are on your system. And that is a great thing for security. It's also a good idea once you set up your, and in fact, let me take a step back as well. When you go through IAM Identity Center, it also has you set up two-factor authentication, which is a requirement as well. And that's something you probably should have on your root AWS account anyways. In fact, there's a lot of guides out there, and it's hinted at in this guide too, that when you start an AWS account, it's a good idea to set up multi-factor authentication and not to log in with the root user. Just keep that in mind. So what we're doing here, though, is you go to the IAM Identity Center. And let me see where I set up. I think it's in Oregon, US West 2. Here it is. And then you click Enable. And I already did that here. And then it has you choose your organization. Click Continue. And then on this screen, it tells you to click this little Cloud Shell button. So if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, this is called the Cloud Shell. And this will log into your environment, and it lets you run terminal commands, which a lot of people don't know that we have a Cloud Shell built directly into the AWS console. Oh, and I did skip one part that we kind of talked about beforehand. There's this AWS free tier. You sign up for it. I'm not going to do that on camera here, but it just asks you for your information, asks for a credit card. Luckily, everything with AWS free tier, everything I'm showing you today is on-demand services. So you only get charged when you're using them, and the free tier covers most of it. I think I have heard someone use the free tier and they got charged like 30 cents when they were setting up a sample Amplify app. So, but that, for the most part, everything is taken care of by the free tier. So going back to the configuration here, you just you copy and paste some of those directly into this Cloud Shell at the bottom. Once again, I already did this. And it's going to make you copy and paste this. And you can just right click and paste it. And then it has you run this printf command that gives you your session URL, USC region, and username. And this is something you'll keep in the future. Then once you do that, after you've run all those commands in the command line, you'll go to click on users here and you'll see Amplify admin. Now this is the user that will show you that you already created. You click on it and then you click this reset password button, and that reset password button will send an email to the email you have set up. And then you'll go to your email and you'll follow the instructions and it'll have you enter your new password in. And then if you haven't already, and that's not mentioned here in the setup guide, it'll ask you for your multi-factor authentication setup, which is rather simple. You can either use something like an authenticator app on your phone, or Macs and Windows PCs. You can actually use the built-in way you log into your Mac or Windows PC as the second factor authentication. Okay, then you'll need to install AWS CLI. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard here. And there's instructions on Mac, Windows, and Linux. I will tell you that I had version 1 of the AWS CLI installed when I did this a little while back, and that is not the latest version. Version 2 is, so I had to uninstall it. But if you click on any of these links, it'll give you instructions of how to uninstall it. So I'm using this right now. I'm on a Windows PC using Windows Subsystem for Linux 2. So it was like the Linux version. It's like almost like an Ubuntu version. I had to like remove it and then install version 2 of AWS. So definitely make sure you have version 2 of the AWS CLI. And then you run this command AWS configure SSO, and you just enter in the information, that start session URL and region. That's directly from the command line that you saw earlier up here. It also will have it'll try to open up the browser, and you'll need to sign in. Make sure you use Amplify admin right here, as we mentioned right here. A lot of people accidentally end up putting in their user or email address in. Make sure you put Amplify admin. And then it'll connect everything up together. It'll ask you for a few more pieces of information. You have to put it should have this in here, but if you need to, you might have to put your account ID. Once you log in, you'll see your account ID, and then it'll ask you for your region and your output format, and you just hit enter there. And then you can test it. If you were following along at home, if you don't have any S3 buckets, it might tell you just don't have anything here, so that's fine. And then if you cat out your AWS config file, you'll see all this information. So the next part, I say right here, when you get to this npx ampex sandbox command, which is right here, I ask you to stop. So you should stop at that point. And then you can use Amplify admin as your username when you log in. All right, so the next part in the steps is to set up Amazon Bedrock. So let's go back to the console. We'll go Amazon Bedrock. I just choose it from the top. So this is our collection of large language models that you can use to connect to, well, basically we give you an API to connect to any of these large language models. If you are an advanced user, you can use things called like SageMaker as well, but I won't get into that. So if you look at the directions here, you're going to see click a button that says get started. So let's do that. Click get started. And then right here it says welcome to Amazon Bedrock, and you click manage model access. And you click manage model access. And then from here, you can find, you can click enable specific models. So right up here, enable specific models. And then it says, this is what it looks like. And then you need to find Claude 3 Sonnet. So if you come down here to Claude 3, that's under Anthropic. This is the latest and greatest, one of the latest and greatest that we have provided as a large language model from Claude. This is perfect for doing these type of requests to like find recipe apps. It's pretty powerful. So we'll just click on it. If you follow the instructions, it tells you need to click next. and then click submit. Now, if this is the first time doing it, it actually will bring up a box that asks you some more information. It'll ask you, can you put your company name, information, and like why you want to use this model? You can just simply put in there, like, this is my company, I'm just doing a demo, and then that'll be fine. And you just click. And then after you go through that box, you'll click submit here. And then it says it's submitted, and it usually takes pretty quick. So it's granted right away. Sometimes it might take an extra minute. Oops. If you need to wait an extra minute, you might have to wait that minute. All right. And also I said here, double check the region you're in. After the next steps, you may need to do this again for regions your app in. Right now I enabled it for US West 2, but I believe my app's on US East 1. So if I click US East 1, I can do that same procedure on here. And I already have it granted. Usually you'll learn later what region that you have here. I think it's because I set up the default region in the identity center as US East 1. So therefore, when I was creating apps, it was doing US East 1, and I had to go into the US East 1 and grant it. But I did the same exact way, modify model access. You can also click model evaluation down here. Model access down here, and do the same thing. All right, so the next step is, and this is where we get a little bit into the code, is we clone down this repo. Now, I already did that beforehand. And if you look at, I'll just bring this up. This is the exercise for the Frontend Nation conference. We have two branches here. One is the main branch, and one is the solution branch. Now, the main branch is the starter branch that we're going to start with, but the solution branch is the one that has everything in there. So at any time we need to kind of take a peek at the answers, we can look at that as well. When we do the clone, though, this will clone down the starter branch, the main branch. So if I come back up here, get branch, it says I'm in main, which is perfect. And then I just need to copy this command. Let's do an npm install and then run the npx sandbox command. I'm just going to run the npm install first. And of course, you'll have to have Node installed for this to work as you expect it. And this will just take a few minutes on my little bit of a slow Windows subsystem for Linux. That is one thing I don't love about WSL. This is a little slow. While it's doing that, we can take a look a little bit. We can peek at what we need to do next. So one thing is, once that's done, we'll need to run the npx amp sandbox command, and then we'll need to run npm run dev, and that'll run the Nuxt server here. Okay, so while that's going, let's take a look at what comes in the starter template. So this is a Nuxt app, as you expect from this workshop. We really have one route. We're using Nuxt page, so we're using the pages folder, and all we have is this one page here, and I'm using Tailwind CSS. So if you are familiar with Nuxt, this is already set up for you, but I have my assets, my Nuxt Tailwind there, and it just has all the everything here that you need. Now submit right now, you probably see a few red squiggly lines, one because we don't have the npm dependencies installed, and second, we haven't copied and pasted everything in. But what I try to do is I added in these little comments in a few places to give you a little hint on what you need to do. And if you follow the guide, it tells you basically what to do there. We also have, oh, it looks like it's done. So before I finish the tour of the app, let's see if we can do the next thing in our list here, which is npx ampx sandbox. So this probably will give us an error, but that's actually good. So let's see what happens here. So if I haven't logged in a while, it'll tell me that I need to log back in, and then I need to check my credentials. And then if that's the case, it tells you to run AWS SSO login. I think I actually logged in maybe during the break, so I don't have to do that. So that's good to know. And what this is doing right here is it's looking at this Amplify folder where I have my auth. And so it's creating this new Cognito instance where I have this define auth. It's also creating this new resource. This is the Amazon Bedrock, but it actually done yet. We have to update this code here. And it's looking at this backend TS file, which kind of puts everything together. And there's some things I can explain here in a moment. But it's doing all this. It's looking at these folders and creating all the infrastructure and creating this local sandbox environment for us to test with. One thing to note too, you may see, I'll talk a little bit about this. You may see these plugins folder. You don't have to touch these. There's actually a Nuxt guide in our docs. So if we go back here and we just search for Nuxt, by the way, I just hit like Command K to bring that up. There's a Nuxt.js server runtime. We have, if you're using React, we have similar guides for React, but we have like a plugin for it. Essentially, what you have to do is you have to just kind of copy and paste some of this code. You create a new file called Amplify API clients and server. I did that all for you in this workshop, so that way you don't have to do it yourself, but that's what this folder is. And that way you can run on the server and on the client without issues. Let's imagine you're doing like middleware or doing something on API routes, you'll have that in there. I also added in this utils folder, and this is kind of just more things that you may need if you're using Nuxt to be able to talk to our backend. And this is all copy and pasted directly from that article you just saw earlier. So you don't have to like know exactly how to set this up. So it's still creating the resources. So this will just take a moment. The first time you run this, it does take anywhere between, I don't know, 5 minutes is probably the most it could take. Could take 1 or 2 minutes. Luckily, after this sandbox runs, this command runs, the environment will be created. And at that time, if you make changes, it'll just hot swap them out. So if you make changes to a function or something else, it'll hot swap it out for most things. There are some things that it has to kind of destroy everything and recreate it. Since it is a sandbox environment, it's probably not that big of a deal, but just be aware that if you make large changes to your infrastructure by going into this Amplify folder and adding all sorts of things, there might be a place where it might be a time where it can't hot swap it in and out. All right, so still creating. Let's see, what else can I do while I'm stalling for time? Because it's going to take a minute. So what do we get? I think we're good on time still. I think we probably, you know what? I think we aren't good on time because I think we only have, while it's doing this, typically, it's done. Let's make sure it works. So I don't think I have the server running. npm run dev. So now I'm running the server in localhost 3000. If I go to localhost 3000, the Nuxt will be loading here. This takes a second. This is just starting the Vite server for our Nuxt app. All right, so here it is. It's not working because it's not connected to anything. So let's do the next part. All right, if we come back to our Frontend Nation. So the first thing it says, you do npm run dev, you can make sure it works. So I need to add in the submit. So I need to go into the index.view, and I added a little section here, be like, this is what you do. Now this is including the submit. So really I could just delete this whole thing. Cool. And you do see a red squiggly line here. Don't worry about that. We'll fix that in a minute. So we'll save it. And then the next thing you need to do, it says, by the way, you'll see a red error on Bedrock results.value. Don't worry about that. Next, we need to update our schema. So we have this const schema in the resource file. So let's do that next. We're going to our resource data. And I say, update this code to create an HTTP resolver. So I'm going to delete it all and just copy and paste this in. And what this is saying is we're creating a new schema. It's going to have a custom type called Bedrock response. We're going to refer to that Bedrock response here, and we're doing what's called a custom query. And it's going directly to this Bedrock.js, which is an HTTP resolver. If we look at this Bedrock.js, you don't have to put this in. It's already there. This contacts the Claude 3 sonnet. It does a JSON request, and it basically takes the this prompt, suggests a recipe idea using this ingredients, and you pass in the ingredients, and it makes a call to that endpoint, which is really nice. You can do this directly inside this job, what they're calling JavaScript resolver. All right, so we have this in place now. And if you notice, we save this. If we go back to this one, it's actually redeploying right now. So it saw these changes and it's going to redeploy it. So this is creating a new custom resolver to connect to Bedrock. So while it's doing that, we can keep going. This is the full file for the Ask Bedrock. So this is our API route. So we're going to go to Ask Bedrock. I'm just going to delete it all, and I'm going to copy and paste it in. And the biggest difference here is now this is an API route. So we receive back a read body, which has ingredients. So we're doing a post to this endpoint. We're getting the ingredients, and then we're doing a client.queries.askBedrock. And what's really nice about this, oops, I won't worry about Amazon Q right now, but I can do client dot. You can see here I have everything I need, models, or in this case, I was doing a custom query. And then I have Ask Bedrock. So I have this all typed for me, so I know exactly what it expects, and it expects a list of ingredients, which is really nice. So I copy and pasted this all in here. Okay, so that's everything we needed to do in this. So now we have to wait a couple of minutes for this to finish. It's going to hot swap some resources out, and we should be able to test this, and it should work. So to kind of go over it again, because I went over it kind of quick, we just kind of copy and paste this code in. This is an endpoint. If we look at our index.view, we're doing this $fetch to ask Bedrock. And if you're familiar with Nuxt, we have this server route under /API ask Bedrock. We're doing a post command to it, and then we're passing in the ingredients to it. And that's about it. We don't even have, we didn't really set up any authentication at all. If you look back here at Amplify and the data resource, you see the schema here. Yeah, I don't think, yeah, we're just using API key. So we don't really have any, yeah, allow public API key. So we're not doing anything special with any authorization rules. Obviously, if this was like a production app, I'd probably do maybe IAM, or maybe users have to log in before they can get recipes. I just don't want someone to like submit 1,000 times. That would be bad. Okay, it's still going. So that's essentially how that works. Now, if you're familiar, what I said earlier here, I said a.model. So there's a whole bunch of ways you can create resolvers. This is a way you can do it through a JavaScript resolver, but you can do Lambda resolvers as well. If you go back into our documentation and we go to functions, examples, let's say create a user profile record. Well, let's see here. Maybe it's in data. We have lots of different examples. Let's see if I can just search for it. Lambda resolver. Set up Amplify REST API, HTTP API. I think if you look at your data model here, so here's a model that you can use. But you can do custom queries. I think that might be under connect data from server-side runtimes. Let's see here. Custom query, add custom queries and mutations. Here, so normally if you just want very straightforward, you can do a.model that generates all the resolvers for you, but you can do these custom queries like a.query or a.mutation, and then you can connect to specific endpoints. Like this connects to, this uses response, echo response, and then you can have it, you can create your own handler and then have it available inside here. So this one has a custom type. And then here's the resource. Here's a custom Lambda function resolver. And then you can invoke it. And that's essentially what we're doing here. All right, so it's done. Let's see if it works. And sometimes we have to stop and restart it. let's just try it again. Let me just refresh it. Let's do salad, green beans, and okra. All right, so that's good. We see wait for it. So that means it's probably connecting to our Amazon Bedrock instance through that resolver that we created. And if it works, it should show you it. Here it is. All right, here's a delicious recipe using salad, green beans, and okra. And it gives you the ingredients and instructions. Awesome. All right, and that's about it for everything. Yeah, this is the finished screenshot. Now I do have some bonuses. I don't think we have time to do them, but if you really wanted to deep dive in, you can add an upload picture of an already made meal and have it give you the recipe. That would be kind of interesting. One thing about Anthropic's Claude 3 model, it accepts images as an input. So you could actually have an image be sent to the model, and then you can have a prompt that says, can you analyze this image and give back a recipe for it? So maybe you have like a picture of a burger and fries, and it could give you the recipe for it. And that'd be pretty neat. It definitely takes some time to do it, but I feel like it wouldn't be that bad. You can also connect this directly up to our Amplify console and then deploy it. Right now it's just running locally, but you can do the next step, which would be to connect it to our console, which if you go back to our, let's see here, if I have Amazon Bedrock, I just type in Amplify, you come here. And then
I'm cutting in for the Q&A because I feel like you have a question that might go in really well for this.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, let's jump in.
Could you explain a little bit more about AWS Amplify and why I'd want to use it on my apps? And you were showing that it wasn't uploading to it. I'm like, wait a minute, this could be a really good time.
Yeah, so we're really made for front end and full stack developers to create apps and help you with everything from hosting your app on AWS. So you don't have to, like, if you've used AWS in the past, you don't have to be a DevOps expert. We have a managed hosting service, like similar to Vercel and others, that you can host your app. We support Next.js, Nuxt.js, all the major providers, static site generated, server side rendered. But one thing that makes us unique is that we also help you with your backend infrastructure. So part of this workshop was all about, hey, just with these a few lines of code, you can create this backend infrastructure. We have client libraries that can talk directly to this backend infrastructure that we just created, and it really works all nicely together. You can also just work one thing if you just want to do one thing, like just do Amplify hosting, you have that. Or if you want to just use our client libraries and use it with an existing AWS project, we have that as well.
Cool. Thank you. We have 2 more questions for you.
Okay.
And I'm going to leave your screen share up just in case there's anything you need to show us there.
You bet.
What are some other use cases for Amazon Bedrock?
Yeah.
Bedrock. Yeah, it helps if I say the final word. Amazon Bedrock.
Yeah, like so kind of AI and these large language models all together. A lot of people are finding all these crazy use cases for them all the time. A lot of what I feel like are interesting things are like chat bots. Anytime you need to talk to describe a set of data or get some information back to your users, it's a great way. You can actually train with our open search and use Amazon Bedrock together to train your own sets of data, or even using something like Amazon Q, which is our code completion tool. You can train your own sets of data and then have that available for you, for your users in like a chat-like interface. Anytime you're trying to summarize information, I think is a great use case for AI and ML in general. And you can take large texts and summarize it for your users. And specifically for Amazon Bedrock, we have the idea that rather than focusing on one large language model, we give you access to many different large language models in this very straightforward way of like this API that you can use to connect to any of them. And then you get the security and backing of AWS as well. So if I come back like to this get started here, and we go to our model access, you can see we have over 30 models available here. We're adding more all the time. Anthropic's Claude 3 is a very
You were
powerful
like going
large language model.
to the like next question, like the final question. You just like set it up. So,
Sure.
why did you choose Claude 3 Sonnet model?
Yeah, it's a really interesting model. Anthropic's has been doing an amazing job of coming up with these large language models. Where Amazon itself is we're very a partner with them on a lot of these things. With Claude 3 Sonnet, they added in the ability. Let me see if I can find it. They have a really good blog post. Yeah, the next gener. This came out a couple months ago, and of course, large language models are moving really quickly right now. But this is very relevant. They did a bunch of benchmark tests that found that Claude 3 was beat out the competitors at GPT-4 and Gemini in a lot of different areas, and just was really good at math, graduate level reasoning. One really cool feature I like, which I didn't show in this demo, is it has, I guess I'd have to find the right article, but it has much better strong vision capabilities. Here it is. So now you can upload pictures to it. It can analyze the pictures to it. It could,
Oh, cool.
it can tell you, like, people have uploaded whole slides, and it can infer like what's on the slide and then map out what's in the future. Like, there's a demo of them using Claude 3 and uploading this snapshot of a graph that showed the stock market from the last year with like a line graph, and then it was able to extrapolate that and then put it into a table, and then you were able to look at it. So it has some really great, interesting vision capabilities as well.
We just got another question. I feel like it was you keep setting these up pretty well. What limitations does it have, and how up to date is the AI with respect to the information?
Well, I know well, with large language models in general, like, you have to be aware that sometimes they hallucinate, and that you're always going to sometimes, you definitely want to fact check some of the information that it gives you. You can train it in specific ways. You can use something like SageMaker with it and train your own models, or using OpenSearch to make it more accurate. There's other tools out there that you can use with something like Claude 3 to help verify some data, to have some additional resources in there. So that's definitely something to think about. Oh, how up to date is the AI with respect to information? I don't know specifically on Claude 3 what the last trained models are on. I know that other large language models tell you, like, oh, this was trained since December of 2023. I don't know specifically for Claude 3. Although since it was just recently released in the last couple of months, I'm assuming it's very up to date, but I don't have that specific information. I bet if I read through this article, I could find it, but
We won't make you do that live. Don't worry. But thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
yeah, no, thank you for letting me show everybody a little bit about Amazon Bedrock and AWS Amplify Gen 2.
Yay. Thank you.